every army has transports. You got Rhinos, you got Raiders, you got freaking Land Raiders, you name it. But none of them are going to do what the Ork Battlewagon is actually doing. The thing is tough. It's cheap for its cost, and it's going to be hitting like an absolute monster truck, literally. So I'm going to show you today why the Battlewagon is possibly the best transports in all of Warhammer 40,000. It's not just going to carry your boys, it's going to carry your dreams of crumping. And I'm so very, very excited to share this with you. So let's break down some things about it. This unit has long time been considered not meta. And this is a very, very interesting thing to me. But the way that meta is defined is basically, the things that are going to be popular in the meta game, which is that you're going to have to overcome. So if you're going to a tournament and you know that knights are in fashion, then we're going to call knights being meta. So you have to be tech to counter knights. Well, the Battlewagon has long time been considered not something that's going to be showing up because it's big, it's slow, blah, 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 blah. And there's just enough anti-tank to make it crumple. But it's making its way into tons of lists right now. And in this video, I am going to show you why it's doing that. I'm going to show you, if you're not an Ork player, you're going to understand why. You're going to understand how you're going to have to counter this beast. And if you are an Ork player, you're going to understand why you might want to be given this bad boy a second look. So we're going to break down its unique profile and why and how this bad boy should be considered. So let's just start with the absolute freaking stats. The stats that define everything. Movement, totally reasonable. He's got a movement of 10. Everyone's happy. 10 is totally fine. It's a little bit slower than, say, the Ork truck at T12 or a Sagittar, which I believe Sagittar goes to T12. Impulsors go T12. But generally speaking, your smaller transports are always going to be faster. Other larger transports are always going to be a little bit slower. Like your standard Land Raider is going to be movement 10 as well. Of course, you don't really see a standard Land Raider very often because it's very challenging to move versus a Ork Battlewagon, which is not. So he has a 22 infantry transport capacity. This is, I believe, the highest transport capacity outside of like Baneblade chassis in the entire game, which is absolutely bonkers. This bad boy is a mobile staging unit, and I'm going to explain what that really means in the next slide. We've got OC5, which is high OC. It means that he can touch the same objective as like a 5-man JPI squad or a 5-man, basically whatever that's not battle line unit squad, and contest OC. This means that if your opponent has those pesky Deathwing Knights and you don't know how to handle them, well, you can just put your Battlewagon on the same objective, and then you're handling them because they're not scoring that primary anymore because you are now contesting it with your high OC. And he also has T10, realistically T12, and I'm going to make the argument where you should always give him T12. The Ard case is the way to go in this bad boy. Now, if you do take the Ard case to get the T12, then you're going to eliminate the possibility of using its firing deck 11, which is totally fine because if you're an Ork player and you want to use firing deck, you're going to be bringing a truck for that anyway. Now, if you want to keep the T10 and keep a firing deck 11 for whatever reason, more power to you. I would just posit to you that the T12 is such a big deal in today's meta and today's state, and I'm going to make the argument for that for you. He's also going to have very solid melee with the Def Rolla, and I would always put the Def Rolla on it. I know a lot of people like to run him without the Def Rolla because it makes it easier to hide the model, but I'm just always going to bring the Def Rolla because it effectively turns your transport and it gives it a unit roll, which is vital in my opinion. And then his Grab and Claw is also very good. The Grab and Claw gives him an extra 2 AP2 damage to attacks. The shooting is absolute garbage. It's a hot dumpster fire, so I wouldn't even bother with the shooting, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even take the big shooters. Like you can kind of see in this picture where you can see like the little big shooters poking out of the back of the Battlewagon. That's actually a pretty big problem because it makes it really hard to maneuver and it can make it very, very challenging for you to hide the model at times. So I would just not take the big shooters. I'd clip them off there and be like, no big shooters for me. I will, however, consider a zap gun because the zap gun, while it is a stupid gun that sucks, occasionally, once in my lifetime, I am going to absolutely obliterate a single guardsman. After I fail to hit every tank and transport in the entire game with the gun, I will one time hit a single Imperial Guardsman and I will like vaporize him from existence, and that will bring me joy. So I will bring the zap gun. But in all reality, the guns are completely irrelevant, and if they make the profile of the vehicle any bigger, I just wouldn't bring them at all. Okay, so now why is this thing the best? And listen, this is subjective. There are varying opinions of other transports that are also really good, and there's lots of amazing transports in this game. My argument, my perspective is going to be made very clear for you today. The battle wagon in particular shapes the battlefield. This bad boy might as well be an extra piece of L-shaped terrain that you can bring to your games that didn't previously exist on the battlefield for all of my Ork players. This is incredibly, incredibly important, okay? Its durability, guys, it doesn't just transport units. It's actually going to be surviving. T12 with permanent AOC, it makes it the same durability as a Land Raider, right? But it's much, much easier to move than a Land Raider. And it's going to be anywhere between 60 and 110 points cheaper based off of the type of Land Raider that you want to bring. Much more mobile because it's just so much thinner. And it hits significantly harder in melee, so it actually wants to be getting up into the thick of things. It's absolutely brutal. All right. Now, with weapons, it's actually a brawler. I literally had this guy kill a war dog in melee. That's pretty good. This thing also gives you the opportunity for charging in and disrupting like a lot of those pesky fights first units. Like you don't really care if the Blade Guard veterans, led by the Justiciar, actually get to fight this guy. It's more or less completely irrelevant to you. And you can actually still kill the Blade Guard veterans with him, which is very, very useful and very, very cool because fight first units are traditionally a very, very challenging thing for the Orks to overcome. So the Battle Wagon actually gives you answers to a lot of problematic things on the battlefield. It's high OC, it denies primary, like we've already talked about. But here's the big deal. And I'm going to show you the actual durability stats of it in the next slide. This thing forces your opponents to focus fire, and it provides a massive, massive base for unit disembarkation. Not to mention, it's effectively immune to being wrapped. So when I say wrapped, what I mean is people will charge, say like a 10-man squad, and they try to wrap them all the way around your transport so that your transport, so that you can't disembark in your turn and you're stuck inside your transport. It can't really happen with the Battle Wagon. One, because it's so darn big, but two, because it's going to slap that unit that tries to wrap it in combat and it's going to kill a bunch of the models, effectively meaning that it can't be wrapped. Now, is it technically possible to wrap it? Of course, but it is exceptionally challenging and is almost never worth the risk and the amount of time it's going to take to actually set it up. So what do I mean when I say it forces opponents to focus fire and provides a massive base for disembarks? Because the model is so long and it's so broad, it actually gives you the ability to disembark your units and gain a lot of freaking movement. Like if I have a unit that is, 10 inches behind a battle wagon, it advances and hops in the battle wagon. Then the battle wagon moves itself up 10 inches, right? So it was 10 inches to start the game, 10 inches behind the battle wagon. The battle wagon is about 8 inches long. Then the battle wagon moves up 10 inches. The battle wagon has now transported the unit effectively 18 inches plus the 10-inch advance it took to get into the battle wagon. And then in your next turn, if you disembark 3 inches in front of the battle wagon. That's a lot. That's like 21 extra inches of movement. Now, this is kind of like an ideal scenario that is pretty hard to replicate. But the fact is that you can actually gain a lot of movement just from embarking and disembarking inside this battle wagon. And yes, I'm fully aware you cannot embark and disembark in the same unit. I don't need you to type that in the comments down below. But if you have disagreements with some things that I am saying that are actually being said, I would love to hear your disagreements or your agreements in the comments down below. All right, now, what are the actual durability stats of this monster? Well, just to give you guys a little perspective on how freaking durable this beast is, because of its profile, it's practically impossible for it to not have cover, because you can pretty much always maneuver it where some little bit is technically obscured by a ruin, so you're going to have cover. So I just, in my brain, go ahead and say it has cover. Now, if I'm going into triple despoilers with the double Gatling cannons and Chaos Knights, and this is one of the killiest lists out there right now, and it's actually a terror of the meta, and it's causing really, really big problems. These things have 36 shots at strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, hits on 3s, and they have the ability to give themselves either lethals or sustained hits on that weapon. That is a lot of firepower. They also have a few missiles and like a heavy flamer that they can shoot. Well, this thing pops basically everything in the game. It obliterates a Gladiator Lancer. It will obliterate more or less any battle tank in the game. But into a T12 battle wagon, which makes it wound on 6s, even if they take lethal hits to help with like getting wounds through, he's only going to suffer 9 damage from a despoiler if that despoiler spends the 1 CP to ignore cover. And if it doesn't spend the CP to ignore cover, this battle wagon, because it will basically always be in cover and it has permanent AOC, will effectively be saving on 3-ups against these despoilers, meaning they'll only take 6 damage from a 385-point despoiler. What this means is your battle wagon will require all 3 despoilers to shoot into it to kill it. This is absolutely disgusting and can completely just 100% ruin the Chaos Knights battle plan. And yes, I know there's more armies in the game than Chaos Knights, but I just want to give you guys a concept of how durable it is, because this is one of the deadliest things in the game going into the profile. What this means, if you have 2 battle wagons, you can just shove them both forward. You just shove them both forward, and then your opponent goes, okay, how do I kill these battle wagons? I'm going to shoot over 1,200 points of my army into one battle wagon to kill it. What do I do about the guys who get out? You do basically nothing is the answer, and then the orcs wah and charge and destroy your entire army. It's actually disgusting how effective these battle wagons are in certain scenarios. T12 is a critical toughness in the current meta, because since big knights had their toughness dropped from T12 down to T11, a lot of the anti-tank weaponry has become less attractive, because a lot of times if you can stack like reroll wound rolls on anti-elite weapons, then that can almost serve as better anti-tank weaponry than just anti-tank weaponry, if that makes sense. Because anti-tank weaponry is always going to be very vulnerable to shooting into like a 4 invulnerable save profile. But anti-elite, which is always going to have much higher volume with like reroll wound rolls or lethals, can actually do better damage into tanks a lot of times than actual anti-tank weaponry, which is something that we're seeing in the meta right now. People are bringing down big knights with the strength A, AP2 damage 2 weaponry, that style, that high volume. That's why despoilers are so good, because they chew through other knights, because they get to wound knights on 5s with those Gatling guns and stuff like that. So T12 is actually a very, very critical breakpoint in the current meta. If you wanted to math it out, it would require 21 las cannon shots to pop a battle wagon, once again, assuming you have cover. It would take 5 laser destroyer shots from lancers, which is 3 lancers, because each lancer has 2 shots, to actually kill a battle wagon. Because if you're, you have a 3-up arm save, and you have permanent AOC, and you have cover, you're saving on 5-ups against those things. If you're in the WA, you're saving on a 5-up invul anyway, so there's multiple ways for you to get to that 5-up, even if they have the ability to ignore cover. So this thing is a brute when it comes to durability, and that's a big deal. So how do we want to use this thing? Well, since it's a massive transport and it has 22 transport, you've got tons of options. You can run knobs in it. You can run mega knobs, boys, snagas. You can run them in any combination. One of the things I really like to do is I love actually putting in a freaking, like, one of my beast snaga boys and Gretchen in it. So on the off chance that the battle wagon gets destroyed in a way that I wasn't planning like early, then I can actually disembark Gretchen as a shield, so that if my opponent was planning on charging the contents, I disembark Gretchen in front of the beast snagas, so my opponent has to waste their time charging the Gretchen, which saves my beast snags or my knobs or whatever that is behind them to be able to charge it next turn. Now you can also have these battle wagons full of just like a 10-man unit of knobs and another 10-man unit of knobs, both led by war bosses. So there's just so many combinations. And one really cool trick that I'd like to share with you guys is I was running a match the other day, and I was running Gazcool Mech Traka and his big mech with 20 boys, and I was playing into Death Guard, and they shot their PBCs, or the Playburst Crawls, in direct shooting and killed a couple of my boys, which brought my unit down to like, what was it, 16 boys? And that allowed me to actually hop the unit inside the battle wagon, because Gaz only takes up for the 4 slots. Gaz +1 for the Gurg Mikari, and then +1 for the Big Mech. He might take +2. I don't remember exactly. But that allowed me to then embark them inside a battle wagon, which was disgusting, and it really hurt my opponent, because now I was just going to, at any point in time, disembark this huge, thunderous, get-wrecked nerd unit that can go crush my opponent. And that was a bad, bad mistake for him to make. So that was a really, really cool trick you could do. Another thing to note is that units that have massive bases that are bigger than 3 inches, which means they cannot be disembarked wholly within 3 inches of transport, there's a clause in the rules commentary that allows you to disembark within 1 inch of the transport. So with Gaz's base being massive, you can effectively get a 4-inch disembark with on, just in case you wanted to know. And don't forget, you could always just run Gaz with like 10 knobs now, and that can go in a battle wagon, which is funny and pretty awesome. But anyway, what you're going to want to do with this thing is turn 1, you always want to be deployed out of line of sight, unless you can force your opponent into a position where if they draw a line of sight, it puts them in a very, very disadvantageous position for themselves. So sometimes you can bait people by leaving just a sliver of yourself exposed. So either give your opponent that one sliver that will force them to take line of sight from a really bad position for them, or be 100% hidden, and then in turn, your turn, depending on the terrain, if you can move up and behind line of sight, obviously do it. But when you're running like 2 of these things, a lot of times, and I proved this in a match that I did against Imperial Knights the other day, you could just run them forward because it takes so much firepower to crack these things. Your opponents really won't have much juice left after they crack them. Now, this won't always work. You cannot always stat check your way through things. Please listen to what I'm saying. You can only do that in certain scenarios. But what these guys do is they can effectively allow you to stage your models, get your models ready to have a go turn without having to be inside ruins. So it effectively brings your own L-shaped ruin to actually stage your models even more aggressively than you were already doing, which is actually a very, very critical thing. So I use these as mobile staging platforms. And then they just go to harass and really screw with your opponent, because an OC5 Battlewagon charges in and tank shocks, kills an armature sometimes, and then, or at least it takes it down to half health, which means the armature goes from OC6 down to OC3, meaning the Battlewagon out OCs it. It's a big problem for your opponent. And like I said earlier, you can also charge a lot of units to really screw up heroic interventions and really screw up fight first. So like if you have that fight first unit of Blade Guard Vets, like I was talking about, well, now the Battlewagon just handles them and doesn't care if the Blade Guard Vets fight first in him. Just a couple other options I want to mention real fast. Other transports can be fantastic for tons of other reasons. Like, I'm not saying that Land Raiders aren't amazing. Like, a Land Raider Redeemer can be a great Overwatch threat. It can be a lot of things, but it's also 110 points more expensive than a Battlewagon. Impulsors and trucks are much faster than Battlewagons, and they're much easier to hide. I completely recognize that. They also have much better firing deck opportunities. You've got other vehicles that have... like firing deck. Okay, I said truck there. Other vehicles are just cheaper and can also transport. You've got Hekaton land fortresses, which have much better shooting, and they have some transport capacity, and they're also almost as durable. But once again, they're going to be 60 to, I think, maybe 80 points more expensive. And they're not really significantly more durable. They're probably about exactly the same amount of durability. Because a T2 or a 2-up armor save or a 3-up armor save with a permanent AOC is going to be approximately the same durability. There's going to be differences, of course, especially when you get to like that AP2 or AP1 damage weaponry. But basically, no transport in the game is as good a brawler or has better OC or better transport. Or, and honestly, there's really nothing that has better durability without access to strats, because if you AOC a Land Raider, of course, it's more durable than the Battlewagon. So the price point is just absolutely amazing. So, in closing, even though Orks are often seen as low-tech, their units are deceptively efficient, guys. Utilize some of the cool stuff that we have. Creativity and understanding the unit's roles matter a lot more than meta popularity. So I'm highly encouraging you to maybe consider the use of some of these things, because this transport is freaking amazing. They've got the glorious role of being a transport and doing other things without just dying, like the Ork kill rig. Like the kill rig, people like to think of it because, oh, it can go do melee and it can actually do a little shooting and all these things, but it just dies because it doesn't have an invulnerable save. It's just T10, 3-up armor save, whereas the Ork Battlewagon actually survives to be able to do those other things. So, Ork Battlewagon, pretty awesome. If you guys like the content, like, subscribe, share with your friends. I love doing Ork stuff. We're back, boys. The WA is strong. Happy crumping. Bye-bye.